Hello and welcome to Hamus Media's latest video. Now this video is going to focus on the 1956 Quality Street advert, which is featured as one of the set products for the Eduqas GCSE Media Studies course. So where does the Quality Street advert actually fit into the course? Well, the Quality Street advert is a set product for Component 1 Section A of your exam. So Component 1, Section A, focuses on two main areas, and those areas are media language and representation. That means that you could be given an exam question where question 1 on media language could be about Quality Street, or question 2 on representation and context could be about Quality Street. It's highly unlikely Quality Street will appear for both questions, but you never know what the exam board might decide. So first of all, let's think about the context of the Quality Street advert. Now, Quality Street was first produced in 1936. Prior to this time, sweets and chocolate especially had been incredibly expensive due to the high costs of sugar and chocolate production. It was in the 1930s that things really began to change, and advances in technology really revolutionised the way that chocolate and confectionery was produced. Macintosh, who were the creators of Quality Street, came up with a really great idea that instead of having really elaborate hand-decorated boxes of chocolates, which were very expensive, to put all these chocolates individually wrapped into a cheap mass-produced tin. As a result of that, this meant that working class families were able to buy these chocolates, and they were a special treat for families and individuals at, say, Christmas time. As today, we enjoy a lot of Quality Street still at Christmas time. Macintosh is the creators of Quality Street drew inspiration for their product from the Regency era. The Regency period ran from 1811 to 1837. And was widely regarded as a time of great beauty, sophistication and elegance. Think Bridgerton, for example, which is set during the Regency era. It was widely regarded for its stunning architecture and fantastic achievements in technology, art and literature. The Regency influence is seen first and foremostly in the two brand mascots, which have featured on Quality Street since its inception. These two brand mascots, called Major Quality and Miss Sweetly, became widely established and instantly recognisable to purchasers of the product. We'll hear more about them later in the video. The Quality Street advert was produced in 1956. This wasn't really that long after the Second World War had finished, and some direct consequences of the Second World War are fairly comparable to the Regency era. For example, there was a massive boom in population, just like in the Regency era after the war. Class divides also changed, and art, literature, education became much more accessible to all types of people. The class divide between the upper and lower classes seemed to be disappearing. Quality Street really encapsulated this spirit and used this in their marketing to convey that these chocolates were available for all. Let's now think about the media language used in the advert. Let's start off thinking about the composition, the layout, the design of the actual advert itself. So if we look at the advert, we can think of it split into thirds. We have the top third, a middle third, and a bottom third going horizontally. Starting with the middle third, which is usually where the eye is drawn straight away, we can see that the box of Quality Street is in the centre of this third, in fact the centre of the whole image. And that's really important because it shows the focus on the product and draws the potential audience's eyes straight to the product. Looking at the top third, we have our brand mascots, Major Quality and Miss Sweetly, featured prominently in a gold frame. As I said previously, the two brand mascots remind the audience of the Regency era and that fantastic golden time. The gold frame round it connotes further the idea of luxury and extravagance, which can be linked to the chocolates and the feeling that they can give the consumer. The gold frame also creates a halo effect above the man and the women consuming them, perhaps suggesting that they are in heaven and this is a heavenly experience to be enjoying the chocolates. Another thing to consider is that through the layout and design, shapes are created by the positioning of the various elements. If we look at the top of the advert and the gold frame again, it creates a round circular shape, synonymous with many of their sweets which can be found within the tin, for example the toffee penny. If we look at the positioning and arrangement of the male and the two females either side of him, it forms a triangle, which has connotations of the infamous green triangle sweet also contained within the tin. The bottom third of the advert is where we get most of the information about the product. We see the sweets up close and their jewel-like colours, again connoting expense and luxury and excitement. We also have the copy of the advert, which uses persuasive language to sell to the audience and entice them into buying. We also need to think about the typography and language of the text used in the advert and analyse this. So, first of all, let's look at language devices. As I said before, persuasive techniques are used to try and lure the consumer into buying the product. One example of this is the alliteration of "what a delicious dilemma." It's also a bit of a pun because the dilemma is should you buy the chocolates or not, but also the gentleman in the advert, which woman should he pick, which chocolate should he have? So it works on multiple levels and is a bit tongue-in-cheek, a bit of humour to appeal to the audience. We also see that alliteration extended through the description of the sweets as being delightfully different. They're trying to show the unique selling point of the product, and this is emphasised further by the fact that there are 18 different varieties of Quality Street. The number 18 also appears in purple, as does the brand name Quality Street. We know that the connotations of purple are luxury and wealth, and again, this reinforces that message that the chocolates have this luxurious feel and wonderful taste to them, and will make the consumer feel special if they purchase them. The purple has also been used on Quality Street's branding for a number of years and still to this day features as a prominent colour on their branding. Next, it's really important that we understand the use of the images and the mise-en-scène within the actual advert. The main element of mise-en-scène is the man and the two women who are sat on the sofa with the chocolates. There's a narrative being created here that the man who has the sweets on his lap is in charge and in control of the situation. It's almost like he's trying to lure women in with the chocolates to see if he can be attractive to them. We could go further here and say the placement of the Quality Street tin on the man's lap over his manhood suggests as some sort of phallic symbol. Perhaps the Quality Street is a symbol of his prowess and strength and ability to provide. The two women either side, you'll notice, are dressed in very bright, vibrant colours, and they mirror and connote the chocolates within the brand. Perhaps these women are being presented as two tasty treats for the male character. Either way, we can see that the male, through props theory, is presented as the hero. He is the one in control of this narrative and deciding who gets chocolates. The two women could be perceived as prizes and rewards for the man who has the sweets. Major Quality and Miss Sweetly, featured in the background behind the male and two females, sees them with their hands outstretched, looking on in anticipation as if they are also keen to get their hands on these chocolates. Having considered the costumes of the two females, when we look at the male, we see he is dressed in a suit. This is typical of the 1950s to suggest that the male would be in a strong position of work and perhaps be the breadwinner. This is a typical narrative of 1950s adverts and can be seen across the board, with the women doting on the men, looking after the men, or trying to entice them to do something. The two brand mascots, Major Quality and Miss Sweetly, feature prominently in this advert. And again, this helps to reinforce the idea of the Regency era now matching up with the 1950s and this idea of vibrancy and vitality coming back to the country post-World War II. It also provides intertextuality with previous adverts and the packaging of Quality Street, so it immediately has this impactful, recognisable brand. Moving on to issues of representation. First of all, it's really important that we consider the impact and context of this advert in the 1950s. In 1950s Britain, we were still living very much within a patriarchal society. This meant that males dominated, really, the principal roles in society, from politics to the workplace to the home. Women were primarily likely to fulfill the stereotypical roles of wife, mother, and homemaker. Again, this is something that we have seen echoed in multiple adverts throughout the 1950s and common depictions of women in general. Considering the representation of gender means looking very, very closely at several elements. First of all, we've talked in the past about that triangular arrangement of the three central figures in the advert. Using that triangle as almost a hierarchical pyramid type structure, we can clearly see that the male is at the top of this triangle, the top of the pyramid, representing the fact that he has the power, he is the dominant force in this situation, and this reflects the patriarchal society of the time. The two women appear lower down either side of him, and they are below the man in rank. As previously said, that idea of the male represented as the stronger gender is conveyed through things like use of costume and his control of the sweets and the phallic symbolism of the placement on his lap. There's two stereotypes we can take away for the females in this advert. First of all, we can see that stereotype is presented that women have a need for chocolate and a desire that has to be fulfilled. That's relied upon for the whole narrative of this actual advert. Secondly, we could say that their body language is very subservient and allowing the male to take control. We could say because they are lower than him on the seat and because they're kissing him, they're doing as the man wishes. However, we could perhaps argue here that these women are being presented as manipulative, which could be said to be another stereotype of the representation of women. Perhaps they're using their feminine wiles and charms to lure chocolates away from the man, and perhaps trading romantic gestures to get chocolates which they desire. In this way, the women could potentially be portrayed as the villains or false heroes, trying to get their hands on the hero's prize. This representation is reinforced even further by the use of the red colours that the women are wearing, particularly on their clothing and their makeup. Red is often associated with the idea of the Scarlet Woman, a temptress, and perhaps these two women are fulfilling that role. But we need to remember that these aren't the only representations of male and female in the advert. We also have Major Quality and Miss Sweetly to think about. We see Major Quality in his officer's uniform of the Regency era, showing his strength and power. We see Miss Sweetly dressed in a beautiful gown, which is incredibly elaborate and colourful. In fact, both of the characters' clothing is colourful, and that's important because it stays in context with the rest of the advert so they don't stick out. But again, it's about reinforcing that wealth, luxury and vibrancy of the Regency era and that flowing through to the product which has been created. When we think about the stereotypical representation of women in the advert, it's an opportunity for us to consider a theoretical perspective, such as the male gaze theory. Now, in this instance, it's likely and probably almost certain that this advert was created by a male, and therefore, through his gaze, he would depict the women in these typical roles as being a prize, an object of affection and desire for the man to obtain. In terms of class, there had always been class divides within society, with your upper classes, middle classes and working class. In the 1950s, post-World War II, many of these barriers began to break down, and as we said, the chocolates were created with working class and middle class families in mind to be able to afford them. The advert kind of reflects this. We see that we have Major Quality and Miss Sweetly up at the top. They are represented in a way as the old school. They are the upper classes, the wealthy, the elite, and they are looking down upon these working middle class people consuming these luxury chocolates. We see those barriers begin to break down and reinforce the message that this is a chocolate for anyone, not just for the wealthy. Due to the male's clothing, we could say this is further reinforced as he appears to be of a higher class than the two women. This could be seen as debatable, but it could suggest that we have these different classes represented within the image, and Quality Street show that it can bring everybody together. One other issue of representation to consider is that of age. We can see that the couples in the advert are likely to be in their mid-20s to 40s, and therefore, with this advert, perhaps Quality Street were trying to target this demographic, which are most likely to potentially begin families, have young children, which would be an ideal market to sell this tin of chocolates to. There were a number of other Quality Street adverts produced in 1956, which showed different types of families or groups or couples enjoying the chocolates, and therefore this would help create mass appeal to a mass audience, ensuring the success of the Quality Street product. I hope this has been of somewhat use to you. As I said, it's not a fully comprehensive guide, but it's a good little recap of key points from the advert that you'll need to remember for your exam. Remember, you could be asked a question on media language or representation, potentially both. And there's that 5-mark 2A question, which is about context. So you need to make sure that you know the background to the product, the origins, inspiration for the branding, how that all came about. You also need to think about the time that the advert was made and what was going on in society then. You need to make sure you understand the design elements, the mise-en-scène, the use of text and language within the advert. And you really need to make sure that you know your representations, how the males, females, class, age, how all these things are shown and conveyed to the audience. So I hope that's been a little bit of help for you in getting prepared for your GCSE. Obviously, if you've got any questions, please drop them in the comments box below and I will try my best to get back to you. And in the description box, I've attached links to some really useful resources that you might want to use. So that's it really. Best of luck in your exam and bye for now.